Question 1. Benchmark analysis indicates that organizations are increasingly adopting advanced integration capabilities within VMware Workspace 121 X to enhance user experience and operational efficiency. However, a common pitfall observed is the tendency to prioritize rapid deployment of these new features over a comprehensive evaluation of potential security and compliance implications. Considering the regulatory framework governing data protection and IT security, which of the following approaches best addresses the inherent risks associated with such advanced integrations? Option A. Defer the formal risk assessment process until a security incident related to the new integrations occurs, at which point a post-incident review will be conducted. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment that identifies potential threats, analyzes vulnerabilities, and defines mitigation strategies specifically for the advanced Workspace 1 integrations before and during their deployment. Option C. Proceed with the integration of advanced Workspace 1 features, assuming that existing security controls are adequate, and address any identified issues reactively after the features are fully operational. Option D. Rely solely on the security assurances provided by VMware's vendor documentation for the advanced features, without conducting an independent risk assessment tailored to the organization's specific environment. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment that identifies potential threats, analyzes vulnerabilities, and defines mitigation strategies specifically for the advanced Workspace 1 integrations before and during their deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in advanced integration projects where the rapid adoption of new technologies, such as advanced Workspace 1 features, outpaces the formal risk assessment processes. The challenge lies in balancing the drive for innovation and feature utilization with the imperative to maintain a secure and compliant operational environment. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to avoid introducing vulnerabilities or non-compliance due to haste or incomplete understanding of the implications of new integrations. The pressure to deliver functionality quickly can create a conflict with the need for thorough due diligence. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and systematic risk assessment that is integrated into the project lifecycle. This means identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the advanced integration of VMware Workspace 121 X features, evaluating the likelihood and impact of these risks, and developing appropriate mitigation strategies. This aligns with best professional practices and regulatory expectations for IT security and data protection. Specifically, it reflects a commitment to a security by design and privacy by design philosophy, ensuring that security and compliance are considered from the outset, rather than as an afterthought. This approach minimizes the potential for breaches, data loss, and regulatory noncompliance, thereby protecting the organization's assets and reputation. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing advanced Workspace 1 features without a formal risk assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a disregard for established security protocols and a failure to adhere to due diligence requirements. This can lead to the introduction of exploitable vulnerabilities, unauthorized access to sensitive data, and potential breaches of data privacy regulations. The assumption that existing security measures are sufficient for new, advanced integrations is a critical oversight. Furthermore, relying solely on vendor documentation without independent verification of security implications for the specific deployment context is also problematic. This approach neglects the unique threat landscape and operational environment of the organization, potentially leaving it exposed. Finally, deferring risk assessment until after an incident occurs is a reactive and unacceptable stance. It signifies a failure to implement preventative controls and a lack of proactive security management, which is a direct contravention of regulatory requirements for risk management and incident prevention. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to all IT integration projects. This involves establishing a clear framework for identifying, assessing, and mitigating risks. When integrating advanced features of platforms like VMware Workspace 1, the process should include 1. Threat modeling, understanding potential attack vectors and vulnerabilities introduced by the new features. 2. Impact analysis, determining the potential consequences of a security incident related to the integration. 3. Control identification, selecting and implementing appropriate security controls to mitigate identified risks. 4. Continuous monitoring, regularly reviewing and updating risk assessments as the environment and threat landscape evolve. This structured decision-making process ensures that security and compliance are embedded throughout the project lifecycle, fostering a robust and resilient IT infrastructure. Question 2. Consider a scenario where an organization needs to integrate a third-party identity provider, IDP, with VMware Workspace ONE access to enable single sign-on for its users. The integration must be secure, scalable, and adhere to best practices for identity federation. Which of the following approaches represents the most secure and recommended method for achieving this integration? Option A. Implement a proprietary, non-standard protocol for identity exchange with the third-party IDP. Option B. Embed the third-party IDP's API keys and secrets directly into Workspace ONE access configuration files for direct authentication. Option C. Develop a custom API integration that bypasses standard federation protocols for authentication. Option D. Utilize the SAML 2.0 protocol to establish a trust relationship between the third-party IDP and Workspace ONE access. The correct answer is D. Utilize the SAML 2.0 protocol to establish a trust relationship between the third-party IDP and Workspace ONE access. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in advanced Workspace ONE integrations, balancing the need for rapid deployment and feature enablement with robust security and compliance. The professional challenge lies in identifying the most secure and compliant method for integrating a third-party identity provider, IDP, into Workspace ONE access, ensuring that sensitive user and device data is protected, and that the integration adheres to VMware's recommended best practices and any applicable data privacy regulations. Assuming a general compliance framework relevant to enterprise software deployments, as no specific jurisdiction is mandated beyond the exam scope. The pressure to deliver functionality quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise security posture. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging the SAML 2.0 protocol for integrating the third-party IDP with Workspace ONE access. This is the industry standard and VMware recommended method for federating identity. SAML 2.0 provides a secure, standardized way to exchange authentication and authorization data between an identity provider and a service provider, Workspace ONE access in this case. It utilizes XML-based assertions, digital signatures, and encryption to ensure the integrity and confidentiality of the authentication process. This approach aligns with best practices for identity federation, minimizing the attack surface and ensuring that authentication is handled by a trusted IDP, while Workspace ONE access acts as the service provider, relying on the IDP's authentication. This method is inherently more secure and manageable than custom scripting or direct API integrations for authentication purposes. Incorrect approach is analysis. Directly embedding IDP credentials within Workspace ONE access configuration files or scripts represents a significant security failure. This practice exposes sensitive IDP credentials, such as API keys or secrets, directly within the Workspace ONE access environment. If these configuration files are compromised, the attacker gains direct access to the IDP, potentially leading to unauthorized access to all integrated applications and user data. This violates fundamental security principles of credential management and is a direct contravention of best practices for secure integration. Developing a custom API integration to bypass standard SAML federation for authentication purposes is also a flawed approach. While custom integrations offer flexibility, they introduce significant risks. Building and maintaining custom authentication logic is complex, prone to errors, and often lacks the robust security features like standardized encryption and signing, inherent in protocols like SAML 2.0. This approach increases the attack surface, requires ongoing security patching and auditing, and deviates from established, secure integration patterns, potentially leading to vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Using a proprietary, non-standard protocol for identity exchange without proper security vetting or adherence to established standards is highly discouraged. Such protocols may not have undergone the same level of security scrutiny as industry standards like SAML 2.0. This can lead to unknown vulnerabilities, interoperability issues, and difficulties in auditing or troubleshooting security incidents. It also creates vendor lock-in and makes it harder to integrate with other systems in the future. Professional reasoning. Professionals should always prioritize security and compliance when integrating systems. The decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the integration requirements and identifying the most secure and standardized protocol available. 2. Evaluating the security implications of each potential integration method, focusing on credential management, data encryption, and authentication robustness. 3. Consulting VMware's official documentation and best practices for Workspace ONE integrations. 4. Considering the long-term maintainability and auditability of the chosen integration method. 5. Prioritizing solutions that leverage industry-standard protocols over custom or proprietary implementations for core security functions like authentication. Question 3. The investigation demonstrates that when integrating a new identity provider with VMware Workspace ONE Access 21X, the chosen authentication mechanism significantly impacts the security posture and compliance adherence. Considering the need for secure federated identity management and the protection of sensitive corporate resources, which of the following integration approaches represents the most secure and compliant best practice for establishing trust between the identity provider and Workspace ONE Access? Option A. Adopting a proprietary, less common authentication protocol that offers a simplified setup but lacks widespread industry adoption and established security validation. Option B. Utilizing a simple HTTP redirect mechanism without any message integrity or encryption protocols to facilitate user authentication. Option C. Configuring the integration to bypass multi-factor authentication for administrative access to the Workspace ONE Access console, relying solely on username and password. Option D. Implementing SAML 2.0 with both message signing and encryption enabled for all assertions exchanged between the identity provider and Workspace ONE Access. The correct answer is D. Implementing SAML 2.0 with both message signing and encryption enabled for all assertions exchanged between the identity provider and Workspace ONE Access. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a common challenge in advanced Workspace ONE integrations: balancing robust security posture with user experience and operational efficiency. When integrating a new identity provider, IDP, with Workspace ONE Access, formerly Identity Manager, the chosen authentication method directly impacts the security of sensitive corporate data and the ease with which users access resources. A misconfiguration can lead to unauthorized access, compliance violations, or significant user friction. The correct approach, leveraging SAML 2.0 with robust signing and encryption, represents best professional practice because it aligns with industry-standard security protocols for federated identity. SAML 2.0 is designed for secure, stateless authentication between parties. The use of digital signatures ensures message integrity and authenticity, preventing tampering. Encryption protects sensitive assertion data in transit. This method provides a strong security foundation, minimizes the attack surface, and is widely supported, facilitating compliance with data protection regulations that mandate secure handling of user credentials and access. An incorrect approach that relies solely on basic HTTP redirection, without any form of message integrity checks or encryption, fails to meet fundamental security requirements. This exposes the authentication process to man-in-the-middle attacks, where an attacker could intercept or modify authentication requests, leading to unauthorized access. Such a failure directly contravenes principles of data security and privacy, potentially violating regulations that require protection against unauthorized disclosure or modification of sensitive information. Another incorrect approach that bypasses multi-factor authentication, MFA, for privileged administrative access to Workspace ONE Access itself, even if the IDP supports it, creates a critical security vulnerability. Administrative accounts often have elevated privileges, and their compromise can lead to widespread system compromise. Failing to enforce MFA for such accounts is a direct violation of security best practices and often contravenes regulatory requirements that mandate layered security controls for critical infrastructure and sensitive data access. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes a single, less secure authentication protocol over more secure established standards, such as OAuth 2.0 with OpenID Connect for specific application integrations where it is appropriate, or SAML 2.0 for broader federation, demonstrates a lack of due diligence in security architecture. While simpler protocols might seem appealing for ease of implementation, they often lack the necessary security assurances for enterprise environments, leaving the organization exposed to risks that could lead to data breaches and regulatory penalties. Professional reasoning process for such a scenario involves a risk-based assessment. This includes understanding the sensitivity of the data being protected, the regulatory landscape governing that data, the threat model for the organization, and the capabilities of the integration technologies. Professionals should prioritize solutions that offer strong authentication, message integrity, and confidentiality, aligning with established security frameworks and compliance mandates. Thorough testing and validation of the chosen integration method are crucial before deployment to ensure it meets both security and usability requirements. Question 4. Upon reviewing the integration requirements for granting contractor access to sensitive internal applications via VMware Workspace 1, which approach best balances security, compliance, and operational efficiency while minimizing risk? Option A. Integrate with a third-party identity provider that supports conditional access policies based on contractor status and device compliance, enforcing granular access controls to specific applications. Option B. Create separate unmanaged user accounts for contractors within Workspace 1 and assign them broad access without any form of identity federation or conditional access. Option C. Implement a single broad access policy for all users, including contractors, that bypasses device compliance checks and grants access to all applications. Option D. Grant all contractors full administrative access to the Workspace 1 environment to simplify onboarding and management. The correct answer is A. Integrate with a third-party identity provider that supports conditional access policies based on contractor status and device compliance, enforcing granular access controls to specific applications. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in Workspace 1 environments, ensuring secure and compliant access to sensitive applications for a diverse user base, including contractors with varying levels of trust and access needs. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate business requirement for contractor access with the imperative to maintain robust security posture and adhere to data protection principles. Misconfigurations can lead to unauthorized data exposure, compliance violations, and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to select an integration strategy that is both effective and secure. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach leverages Workspace 1 granular access control capabilities by integrating with a third-party identity provider, IDP, that supports conditional access policies based on contractor status and device compliance. This allows for the dynamic enforcement of security requirements. For instance, contractors might be granted access only from compliant, managed devices, and their access could be restricted to specific applications or data sets. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and ensures that access is granted only when security conditions are met, thereby minimizing the attack surface and protecting sensitive data. This approach is best professional practice as it directly addresses the security and compliance requirements inherent in managing external user access, aligning with general data protection principles that mandate appropriate security measures for data processing. Incorrect approaches analysis. Granting all contractors full administrative access to the Workspace 1 environment without proper segmentation or conditional access is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This violates the principle of least privilege, exposing the environment to undue risk from potentially less vetted external personnel. It could lead to unauthorized access to sensitive data, violating data protection regulations that require appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure data security. Implementing a single, broad access policy for all users, including contractors, that bypasses device compliance checks and grants access to all applications is also professionally unacceptable. This approach ignores the inherent security differences between internal employees and external contractors, creating a security loophole. It fails to implement necessary safeguards, potentially leading to data breaches and non-compliance with data protection laws that mandate risk-based security controls. Creating separate, unmanaged user accounts for contractors within Workspace 1 and assigning them broad access without any form of identity federation or conditional access is another failure. This approach fragments identity management, making auditing and revocation of access difficult. It also bypasses the security benefits of managed devices and conditional access policies, increasing the risk of unauthorized access and data compromise, which is contrary to regulatory expectations for secure data handling. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such integration challenges by first understanding the specific business requirements and the risk profile associated with the user group. This involves identifying the sensitive data or applications that need protection and the potential threats posed by external access. The next step is to evaluate the capabilities of the Workspace ONE platform and its integration partners to enforce granular access controls. A risk-based approach, prioritizing security and compliance, should guide the selection of the most appropriate integration strategy. This involves a thorough assessment of available security features, such as conditional access, multi-factor authentication, and device compliance policies, and how they can be applied to meet the specific needs of the scenario while adhering to relevant data protection regulations and ethical obligations. Question 5. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive approach to integrating a new third-party identity provider with an existing VMware Workspace ONE environment to support a diverse range of internal and external applications. Given the critical nature of user access and data security, what is the most prudent and professionally responsible method for implementing this integration to minimize disruption and ensure compliance? Option A. Prioritize the technical connection of the IDP to Workspace ONE, deferring the detailed assessment of individual application authentication requirements until after the initial integration is complete. Option B. Initiate a phased rollout, beginning with a pilot group of users and a subset of applications, to thoroughly test the integration and validate authentication flows before a full deployment. Option C. Proceed with a full-scale deployment across all users and applications simultaneously to expedite the transition and realize the benefits of the new IDP as quickly as possible. Option D. Implement the integration without comprehensive user training or updated documentation, assuming users will adapt quickly to the new authentication process. The correct answer is B. Initiate a phased rollout, beginning with a pilot group of users and a subset of applications, to thoroughly test the integration and validate authentication flows before a full deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent complexity of integrating a new identity provider, IDP, with an existing VMware Workspace ONE environment. The challenge lies in ensuring seamless user authentication and authorization across diverse applications while maintaining robust security and compliance. The need to balance user experience with stringent security policies, especially when dealing with sensitive corporate data, requires careful judgment and a thorough understanding of both Workspace ONE capabilities and the chosen IDP's integration mechanisms. Misconfiguration can lead to access control failures, data breaches, and significant operational disruption. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased rollout strategy, beginning with a pilot group of users and a limited set of applications. This allows for thorough testing of the integration, identification of potential issues, and validation of authentication flows in a controlled environment. This methodology aligns with best professional practices by minimizing risk and ensuring that any unforeseen problems are contained before impacting the broader user base. It also provides an opportunity to gather feedback from pilot users, refine configurations, and train support staff. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this approach demonstrates due diligence in protecting user data and ensuring service availability, thereby upholding organizational responsibility. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the integration directly across all users and applications without prior testing is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It exposes the organization to a high risk of widespread authentication failures, potentially locking out users from critical systems and leading to operational paralysis. This reckless approach violates the principle of responsible data stewardship and could result in noncompliance with data protection regulations if user access to sensitive information is compromised. Deploying the integration with minimal or no user training and documentation is also professionally unacceptable. This can lead to user confusion, increased help desk tickets, and a perception of a poorly managed IT change. Ethically, it fails to adequately support users through a significant system change, potentially hindering their productivity and causing frustration. While not a direct regulatory breach in itself, it contributes to an environment where security policies might be bypassed due to user misunderstanding, indirectly increasing compliance risks. Focusing solely on the technical integration, without considering the application-specific authentication requirements and potential compatibility issues, is another critical failure. Some applications may rely on older authentication protocols or have unique integration needs that are not immediately apparent. Failing to address these can result in applications becoming inaccessible post-integration, impacting business operations and potentially violating service-level agreements. This oversight demonstrates a lack of comprehensive planning and a failure to consider the end-to-end user experience, which is a cornerstone of professional IT service delivery. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such integrations by first conducting a thorough discovery and planning phase. This includes understanding the existing environment, identifying all applications that will be integrated, and assessing their authentication methods. A risk assessment should be performed to identify potential challenges and develop mitigation strategies. The implementation should then follow a phased approach, starting with a pilot, followed by a controlled rollout. Continuous monitoring and validation are crucial throughout the process. Clear communication with stakeholders, including end users and application owners, is essential for managing expectations and ensuring a smooth transition. This systematic and risk-aware approach ensures that technical objectives are met while upholding security, compliance, and user satisfaction. Question 6. Examination of the data shows that during the integration of a new third-party identity provider with VMware Workspace 1, administrative access to the Workspace 1 console is not consistently enforcing multi-factor authentication, MFA, for privileged roles, even though the existing identity provider configuration mandates it. This oversight occurred because the conditional access policies within Workspace 1 were not updated to universally apply MFA to administrative access when utilizing the new IDP. What is the most appropriate and secure course of action to rectify this situation? Option A. Rely solely on the multi-factor authentication capabilities of the new third-party identity provider, without configuring any Workspace 1 level enforcement for administrative access. Option B. Implement a Workspace 1 conditional access policy that mandates MFA for all administrative roles accessing the Workspace 1 console, irrespective of the identity provider used for authentication. Option C. Allow administrative access without MFA for a limited period while the integration is being finalized, assuming the new IDP has its own robust security measures. Option D. Temporarily disable MFA for all users during the identity provider integration to streamline the process and re-enable it once the integration is fully stable. The correct answer is B. Implement a Workspace 1 conditional access policy that mandates MFA for all administrative roles accessing the Workspace 1 console, irrespective of the identity provider used for authentication. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in advanced Workspace 1 integrations where a critical security control, multi-factor authentication, MFA, for administrative access, is being bypassed due to an oversight during a complex integration. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for operational continuity with the imperative to maintain robust security posture. The integration of a new third-party identity provider, IDP, introduces a potential vulnerability if not configured with the same security rigor as the existing system. The professional challenge is to identify and rectify this security gap without causing undue disruption to administrative workflows, while adhering to established security policies and best practices. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a conditional access policy that enforces MFA for all administrative roles accessing Workspace 1, regardless of the IDP used, represents best professional practice. This approach directly addresses the identified security gap by ensuring that privileged access is always protected by a second factor of authentication. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, fundamental tenets of modern cybersecurity. From a regulatory and compliance perspective, many frameworks e.g., NIST, ISO 27001, and specific industry regulations like HIPAA or PCI DSS, depending on the jurisdiction and industry, mandate strong authentication for administrative access to sensitive systems. By enforcing MFA universally for these roles, the organization maintains compliance and significantly reduces the risk of unauthorized administrative access, which could lead to data breaches or system compromise. Incorrect approaches analysis. Allowing administrative access without MFA, even temporarily, while the integration is being finalized, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This directly contravenes security policies and best practices that mandate strong authentication for privileged accounts. It exposes the organization to a high risk of unauthorized access, potentially leading to data breaches, system manipulation, and reputational damage. Such a lapse could result in noncompliance with data protection regulations and security standards, leading to fines and legal repercussions. Disabling MFA for all users during the integration to simplify the process is another critical failure. This approach sacrifices security for convenience, creating a widespread vulnerability. It is ethically unsound as it knowingly exposes all users and the organization's data to increased risk. This would likely violate numerous security policies and regulatory requirements that mandate the protection of user data and system integrity, leading to severe compliance issues. Relying solely on the new IDP's inherent MFA capabilities without a Workspace one-level enforcement mechanism is insufficient. While the IDP may offer MFA, the integration might not be configured to pass this authentication context correctly to Workspace ONE for administrative sessions, or the IDP's MFA might be less stringent than the organization's policy. This creates a potential gap where administrative access could be granted without the required level of assurance, leading to a security and compliance failure. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach. When a security gap is identified, the immediate priority is to mitigate the risk. This involves understanding the potential impact of the vulnerability and implementing controls to prevent exploitation. In this case, the risk of unauthorized administrative access is high. The decision-making process should involve 1. Identifying the vulnerability MFA bypass for admins. 2. Assessing the risk high impact due to privileged access. 3. Determining the most effective control Workspace ONE conditional access policy for MFA. 4. Implementing the control with minimal disruption, phased rollout if necessary, but immediate enforcement for critical roles. 5. Verifying the control's effectiveness. This systematic approach ensures that security and compliance are prioritized throughout the integration lifecycle. Question 7. Performance analysis shows a significant increase in application load times for a subset of users within the Workspace ONE managed environment. To diagnose the root cause, the integration specialist needs to examine detailed user session logs, which contain information about application usage, device performance metrics, and user identifiers. The organization operates under strict data privacy regulations that prohibit the direct access and analysis of personally identifiable information, PI, without explicit justification and robust anonymization. The specialist must provide actionable insights to improve performance without violating these privacy mandates. Which of the following approaches best balances the need for detailed performance analysis with the imperative of data privacy? Option A. Develop a custom script to filter out only the performance metrics from the logs, leaving user identifiers and application usage details intact for a more direct correlation with specific user experiences. Option B. Decline to perform the performance analysis due to the presence of PII in the logs, citing privacy regulations as an insurmountable barrier to investigation. Option C. Implement a data anonymization and aggregation strategy for the user session logs, ensuring that individual user identifiers are removed and performance metrics are analyzed in an aggregated, trend-based manner before presenting findings. Option D. Directly access and analyze the raw user session logs, including all user identifiers and application usage details, to pinpoint the exact users experiencing performance issues, and then address their specific configurations. The correct answer is C. Implement a data anonymization and aggregation strategy for the user session logs, ensuring that individual user identifiers are removed and performance metrics are analyzed in an aggregated, trend-based manner before presenting findings. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the ethical responsibility to maintain data privacy and security, while also fulfilling a legitimate business need for performance monitoring. The integration specialist is caught between the potential for unauthorized access to sensitive user data and the directive to provide comprehensive performance metrics. The challenge lies in balancing these competing interests without violating established privacy principles or regulatory compliance. Careful judgment is required to identify solutions that are both effective for performance analysis and compliant with data protection standards. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes data anonymization and aggregation before analysis. This aligns with the principle of data minimization and purpose limitation, fundamental to many data protection regulations. By anonymizing data, sensitive personal information is removed or obscured, significantly reducing the risk of individual identification. Aggregating data further abstracts individual user activity into broader trends, making it impossible to link performance issues back to specific users. This method ensures that performance insights can be gained without compromising user privacy, thereby adhering to ethical best practices and regulatory requirements for handling personal data. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves directly analyzing raw performance logs that contain user identifiers and potentially sensitive application usage details. This is a direct violation of data privacy principles, as it exposes personal information without explicit consent or a clear, anonymized purpose. Such an approach could lead to regulatory penalties for data breaches and a loss of user trust. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the performance analysis request entirely due to privacy concerns, without proposing any alternative solutions. While this avoids a privacy violation, it fails to meet the business objective of performance monitoring and demonstrates a lack of proactive problem solving. This can hinder operational efficiency and indicate a deficiency in understanding the integration specialist's role in supporting business needs. A third incorrect approach is to implement a solution that anonymizes data but fails to aggregate it sufficiently, leaving a residual risk of re-identification. This might involve superficial anonymization techniques that can be reversed with additional information, or a lack of robust aggregation that still allows for the inference of individual behavior. This approach, while attempting to address privacy, falls short of providing adequate protection and could still lead to compliance issues. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field must adopt a risk-based approach. When faced with a conflict between data access for analysis and data privacy, the default should be to protect privacy. The decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the specific data involved and its sensitivity. 2. Identifying the legitimate business purpose for accessing the data. 3. Evaluating potential risks to data privacy and security. 4. Exploring technical solutions that mitigate these risks, such as anonymization, pseudonymization, and aggregation. 5. Consulting with legal and compliance teams if uncertainty exists. 6. Documenting the chosen approach and its justification. Question 8. The control framework reveals a critical security vulnerability in the VMware Workspace 1 UEM component that could allow unauthorized access to sensitive device data. The IT security team has identified a vendor-provided patch, but its deployment requires a scheduled maintenance window and extensive pre-deployment testing to ensure compatibility with existing integrations and custom configurations. Business operations team is concerned about any downtime, as it directly impacts critical sales processes. What is the most appropriate course of action to address this vulnerability while adhering to best practices and regulatory considerations? Option A. Develop a custom workaround solution internally to address the vulnerability, bypassing the vendor patch and the standard change management process to avoid any potential downtime associated with vendor updates. Option B. Immediately deploy the patch to all affected devices without prior testing or formal change control to mitigate the security risk as quickly as possible, accepting the potential for operational disruption. Option C. Defer patching until a less critical business period, relying on existing security controls to mitigate the risk, and initiate a review of the patching policy for future scenarios. Option D. Implement the vendor-provided patch during the next scheduled maintenance window after completing thorough compatibility testing and obtaining necessary approvals through the change management process, while communicating potential impacts and mitigation strategies to business operations. Correct answer is D. Implement the vendor-provided patch during the next scheduled maintenance window after completing thorough compatibility testing and obtaining necessary approvals through the change management process, while communicating potential impacts and mitigation strategies to business operations. Explanation: the control framework reveals a scenario where a critical security vulnerability has been identified within the VMware Workspace 1 environment, impacting the integrity of user data and device management. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for remediation with the potential disruption to business operations and the compliance requirements for incident response and change management. A hasty, uncoordinated response could lead to further security breaches or non-compliance with established protocols. The correct approach prioritizes a structured, risk-based remediation process that aligns with established ITIL and VMware best practices for incident and change management. This involves thorough impact assessment, controlled deployment of patches or workarounds, comprehensive testing, and clear communication with stakeholders. This approach ensures that security is addressed effectively while minimizing operational risk and adhering to regulatory guidelines for data protection and system integrity. An incorrect approach that bypasses established change control procedures to immediately deploy a patch without proper testing risks introducing new, unforeseen issues or failing to fully address the vulnerability, potentially leading to further security incidents. This violates principles of controlled change and could be seen as negligent in a regulatory context. Another incorrect approach that delays remediation due to fear of disruption, without implementing interim mitigating controls, exposes the organization to continued risk and potential data breaches, which is a failure in due diligence and security posture. A third incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical patching, without considering the broader impact on user experience or business workflows, neglects a holistic security and operational perspective, potentially leading to user dissatisfaction and reduced productivity, which indirectly impacts compliance by failing to maintain a secure and functional environment. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the nature and severity of the incident, followed by assessing the potential impact on business operations and compliance obligations. This should then guide the selection of the most appropriate remediation strategy, ensuring it is executed through established, documented processes that include testing, validation, and communication. The framework should also incorporate a feedback loop for continuous improvement of incident response and change management procedures. Question 9. Analysis of the process for integrating third-party identity providers with VMware Workspace 121. X. Focusing on optimizing the workflow for initial deployment and ongoing management. What approach best balances rapid deployment with robust security and operational stability? Option A. Prioritize the integration of all possible features and functionalities from the identity provider upfront, without extensive testing, to ensure maximum immediate utility for end users. Option B. Focus solely on achieving basic authentication functionality, deferring any advanced security configurations or compliance checks until after the initial deployment is complete. Option C. Design and develop integrations in a dedicated staging environment, conduct thorough security and functional testing, and deploy to production through a formal change control process with rollback plans. Option D. Implement integrations directly into the production environment after initial configuration, relying on vendor defaults and immediate user feedback for issue identification. The correct answer is D. Implement integrations directly into the production environment after initial configuration, relying on vendor defaults and immediate user feedback for issue identification. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT integration projects, balancing the need for rapid deployment with the imperative of maintaining robust security and compliance. The pressure to deliver a functional Workspace 1 environment quickly can lead to shortcuts that, while seemingly efficient in the short term, introduce significant risks. The challenge lies in identifying and mitigating these risks proactively, ensuring that the integration process not only meets functional requirements, but also adheres to established security best practices and any relevant VMware licensing or support guidelines, which are implicitly part of the operational framework for this exam. The absence of a formal change control process and thorough testing before production deployment is a critical vulnerability. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach emphasizes a phased, controlled, and validated integration process. This involves establishing clear integration requirements, designing the architecture with security and scalability in mind, developing and testing integrations in a non-production environment, and then implementing them in production under a controlled change management process. This methodology ensures that potential issues are identified and resolved before impacting end users or the production environment. It aligns with best practices for IT service management and risk mitigation, ensuring that the Workspace ONE deployment is stable, secure, and compliant with operational standards. This approach minimizes the likelihood of security breaches, data loss, or service disruptions, thereby protecting the organization's assets and reputation. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves prioritizing speed over thoroughness by deploying integrations directly into production without prior testing or a change control mechanism. This bypasses critical validation steps, significantly increasing the risk of introducing bugs, security vulnerabilities, or performance issues that could disrupt operations and compromise sensitive data. This directly contravenes the principle of responsible system deployment and could lead to non-compliance with internal security policies and potentially VMware support agreements if the issues cause instability. Another incorrect approach focuses solely on functional requirements, neglecting security considerations during the integration design and implementation phases. This can result in integrations that, while technically functional, expose the environment to security threats such as insecure data transmission, weak authentication mechanisms, or improper access controls. Such oversights can lead to data breaches, unauthorized access, and significant regulatory or compliance violations, depending on the data being managed. A third incorrect approach involves relying on vendor default configurations without customization or validation. While defaults can provide a starting point, they are rarely optimized for a specific organization's security posture or operational needs. Deploying without review and adjustment can leave the environment vulnerable to known exploits or misconfigurations, failing to meet the organization's specific risk tolerance and compliance obligations. This also misses opportunities to leverage advanced features for process optimization. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to integration projects. This involves identifying potential risks associated with each integration point, assessing their likelihood and impact, and implementing appropriate controls and mitigation strategies. A structured approach, incorporating design, development, testing, and deployment phases under a robust change management framework, is essential. Continuous monitoring and validation post-deployment are also critical to ensure ongoing stability and security. This systematic process ensures that integrations are not only functional, but also secure, reliable, and compliant with organizational policies and industry best practices. Question 10. Governance review demonstrates that a critical business unit requires immediate integration of a new third-party service with VMware Workspace 121. To enable enhanced mobile application functionality. The integration specialist is under pressure to deploy this rapidly, which approach best balances the business need for speed with the imperative of maintaining a secure and compliant Workspace ONE environment. Option A. Implement the integration with minimal initial security configurations, focusing on core functionality, and plan to address detailed access controls and logging after the initial deployment phase. Option B. Deploy the integration as quickly as possible to meet the business unit's immediate needs, relying on existing Workspace ONE security policies to cover the new integration and establishing monitoring only if specific issues arise. Option C. Conduct a thorough risk assessment, define granular access control policies for the integrated service, establish comprehensive logging and auditing, and deploy in a phased manner, validating security and compliance at each step. Option D. Grant the integrated service broad administrative privileges within Workspace ONE to simplify the integration process and ensure immediate full functionality, deferring fine-grained permission adjustments to a later date. The correct answer is A. Implement the integration with minimal initial security configurations, focusing on core functionality, and plan to address detailed access controls and logging after the initial deployment phase. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in advanced Workspace ONE integrations, balancing the need for rapid feature deployment with the imperative of maintaining robust security and compliance. The challenge lies in the inherent tension between business agility, driven by the desire for new functionalities, and the strict adherence to regulatory frameworks that govern data privacy and access control. The integration specialist must navigate this by understanding the specific requirements of the VMware Workspace 121 X platform and its associated security controls, while also being acutely aware of the potential impact on end-user experience and operational efficiency. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise security posture, making careful judgment and a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased integration strategy that prioritizes security and compliance at every stage. This aligns with best practices for secure software development and deployment, as well as the principles of least privilege and data minimization, often mandated by regulatory bodies. By conducting thorough risk assessments, implementing granular access controls, and ensuring comprehensive logging and auditing capabilities from the outset, the integration specialist proactively addresses potential vulnerabilities. This approach ensures that the integration not only meets functional requirements, but also adheres to the spirit and letter of relevant regulations, thereby safeguarding sensitive data and maintaining the integrity of the Workspace ONE environment. This proactive stance is crucial for long-term system stability and trust. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a new integration without a formal security review and without establishing clear access control policies for the integrated service is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach bypasses critical security checkpoints, potentially exposing sensitive user data to unauthorized access or misuse, which directly violates data protection regulations. Furthermore, failing to implement comprehensive logging and auditing mechanisms means that any security incidents or policy violations cannot be effectively detected, investigated, or remediated, hindering compliance efforts and obscuring accountability. This creates a blind spot in the security posture, making the organization vulnerable to breaches and regulatory penalties. Deploying the integration with overly broad administrative privileges for the integrated service, even if it appears to simplify management, is another critical failure. This violates the principle of least privilege, a cornerstone of secure system design and a common regulatory requirement. Granting excessive permissions increases the attack surface and the potential impact of a compromise, as a malicious actor gaining control of the integrated service could then access or manipulate a much wider range of resources than necessary. This lack of granular control directly contravenes the need for strict access management and data protection. Prioritizing the immediate availability of the new feature over establishing robust monitoring and alerting for the integration security events is a short-sighted and risky strategy. While speed to market is important, it should not come at the expense of security. The absence of effective monitoring means that security anomalies, unauthorized access attempts, or policy violations may go unnoticed for extended periods, allowing potential damage to escalate. This failure to implement adequate oversight directly undermines the ability to detect and respond to threats, which is a fundamental expectation of most regulatory frameworks governing IT systems and data. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, integrating security and compliance considerations from the initial design phase through to deployment and ongoing management. This involves understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the organization and the data being handled. A structured process of threat modeling, security control implementation, access management, and continuous monitoring is essential. When faced with competing priorities, such as speed of deployment versus security, professionals must advocate for a balanced approach that does not compromise regulatory adherence or the organization's security posture. This requires clear communication with stakeholders about the risks associated with deviating from best practices and regulatory requirements. Question 11. Quality control measures reveal that a recent security policy update mandates stricter access controls for sensitive applications managed by VMware Workspace ONE. The integration specialist is tasked with implementing these new controls across multiple diverse business units, each with unique workflows and varying levels of technical adoption. Which approach best balances the immediate security requirements with the need to maintain operational continuity and user productivity? Option A. Implement a phased rollout of the new access controls, starting with a pilot group in one business unit, gathering feedback, and iteratively refining the configuration before broader deployment. Option B. Focus on implementing the new access controls only for the most technically proficient business units first, deferring implementation for others until they demonstrate greater readiness. Option C. Prioritize the technical implementation of the strictest possible access controls based on vendor best practices, assuming business units will adapt their workflows accordingly. Option D. Deploy all new access control policies simultaneously across all business units to ensure immediate and uniform application of the security mandate. The correct answer is A. Implement a phased rollout of the new access controls, starting with a pilot group in one business unit, gathering feedback, and iteratively refining the configuration before broader deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves balancing the immediate need for enhanced security with the potential impact on user productivity and the established operational workflows of different business units. The integration specialist must navigate conflicting stakeholder priorities, technical constraints, and the implicit trust placed in their expertise to implement solutions that are both effective and minimally disruptive. The challenge lies in translating a broad security mandate into actionable, integrated technical solutions within the Workspace ONE ecosystem, ensuring compliance without hindering business operations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a phased, risk-based implementation strategy. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and gradual adoption, allowing for thorough testing and validation at each stage. By engaging with key stakeholders from each business unit early and often, the integration specialist ensures that the security enhancements are understood, accepted, and tailored to specific operational needs. This collaborative approach minimizes unforeseen disruptions, builds trust, and facilitates a smoother overall integration. It also allows for the identification and mitigation of potential compliance gaps or operational bottlenecks before they impact a wider user base, thereby upholding the integrity of the Workspace ONE deployment and its adherence to security policies. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach fails by attempting a big bang deployment of all security enhancements simultaneously across all business units. This is professionally unacceptable as it disregards the diverse operational needs and technical readiness of different departments. It creates a high risk of widespread user disruption, increased support overhead, and potential security vulnerabilities arising from rushed or incomplete configurations. Ethically, it breaches the professional responsibility to implement solutions that are both secure and functional, potentially leading to a loss of user confidence and productivity. Another incorrect approach involves prioritizing technical feasibility over stakeholder input and operational impact. This leads to a solution that might be technically sound, but impractical for end users or specific business processes. It demonstrates a failure to understand the holistic impact of integrations and can result in workarounds that undermine security or lead to shadow IT. This approach is ethically questionable, as it prioritizes the technical solution over the well-being and efficiency of the users it is intended to serve. A third incorrect approach is to implement security enhancements based solely on vendor recommendations, without contextualizing them to the specific organizational environment and existing integrations. While vendor guidance is valuable, it must be adapted. This can lead to overconfiguration, underconfiguration in critical areas, or conflicts with existing Workspace ONE configurations or third-party integrations, ultimately compromising security or operational stability. This represents a failure in due diligence and a lack of critical analysis in applying best practices to the unique organizational context. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, iterative approach to complex integrations. This involves 1. Thoroughly understanding the security mandate and its underlying risks. 2. Identifying all relevant stakeholders and their operational requirements. 3. Developing a phased implementation plan that prioritizes critical security controls and allows for incremental testing and feedback. 4. Engaging in continuous communication and collaboration with stakeholders throughout the integration lifecycle. 5. Documenting all decisions, configurations, and testing results. 6. Establishing clear rollback procedures and monitoring mechanisms. This systematic process ensures that technical solutions are robust, secure, and aligned with business objectives, fostering trust and successful adoption. Question 12. Research into the integration of a new comprehensive logging solution within VMware Workspace 121 X to enhance security monitoring and troubleshooting capabilities. What is the most appropriate approach to ensure compliance with data privacy regulations and maintain user trust? Option A. Prioritize data minimization and anonymization. Conduct a thorough review of collected data with legal and compliance teams, and implement granular access controls for log data. Option B. Collect all available diagnostic and user activity data to ensure no potential issue is missed, and address privacy concerns only if a specific complaint arises. Option C. Integrate the logging solution and rely on existing general IT policies to cover data handling, assuming user consent is implied by their use of the organization's network. Option D. Deploy the logging solution with default settings and immediately grant broad administrative access to all collected logs to facilitate immediate troubleshooting. The correct answer is A. Prioritize data minimization and anonymization. Conduct a thorough review of collected data with legal and compliance teams, and implement granular access controls for log data. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in managing sensitive user data within a Workspace ONE environment. The core difficulty lies in balancing the organization's need for comprehensive security monitoring and troubleshooting with the imperative to protect user privacy and comply with data protection regulations. The integration of a new logging solution requires careful consideration of what data is collected, how it is stored, and who has access, all while ensuring that the integration itself does not inadvertently create new vulnerabilities or compliance gaps. The advanced nature of Workspace ONE integration means that misconfigurations can have far-reaching consequences across multiple services and user endpoints. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased, risk-assessed integration that prioritizes data minimization and explicit consent where applicable. This aligns with the principles of data protection by design and by default, which are fundamental to regulatory frameworks governing data privacy. Specifically, it ensures that only necessary diagnostic and operational data is collected, and that any personally identifiable information, PI, is anonymized or pseudonymized unless absolutely required for a specific authorized purpose. The inclusion of a review process by legal and compliance teams guarantees that the integration adheres to the organization's policies and relevant data protection laws, such as GDPR or CCPA, depending on the jurisdiction. This proactive, compliance-first strategy mitigates legal risks, builds user trust, and upholds ethical data handling practices. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the logging solution without a thorough review of the data being collected and its potential impact on user privacy is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach risks violating data protection laws by collecting excessive or unnecessary PII, leading to potential fines and reputational damage. It also demonstrates a disregard for the principle of data minimization. Integrating the logging solution and immediately granting broad administrative access to the collected logs without a defined access control policy is another failure. This creates a security risk by exposing sensitive user data to unauthorized personnel and increases the likelihood of accidental or malicious data breaches. It violates the principle of least privilege and fails to implement adequate security measures for sensitive data. Deploying the logging solution with a generic, non-specific privacy statement that does not clearly articulate the types of data being collected and the purpose of collection is insufficient. This approach fails to meet transparency requirements mandated by data protection regulations, which require clear and understandable communication to users about how their data is processed. It can lead to a lack of informed consent and erode user trust. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the regulatory landscape and organizational policies relevant to data privacy and security. This involves a risk-based approach, where potential impacts on user privacy and security are assessed before any integration or configuration changes are made. The principle of privacy by design should guide all technical decisions, ensuring that privacy considerations are embedded from the outset. A multidisciplinary approach involving IT security, legal, and compliance teams is crucial for comprehensive risk assessment and mitigation. Regular audits and reviews of implemented solutions are necessary to ensure ongoing compliance and security. Question 13. Cost-benefit analysis shows that enabling a new, unvetted third-party application integration within VMware Workspace 121 X could significantly reduce operational overhead by automating a manual process. However, this integration has not undergone a formal security review or compliance assessment by the organization's dedicated teams. What is the most professional and responsible course of action for the integration specialist? Option A. Implement the integration on a limited number of non-critical devices to test its functionality and observe any immediate issues. Option B. Proceed with the integration immediately to realize the cost savings, assuming the vendor's claims of security are sufficient. Option C. Inform management of the potential cost savings and request an expedited, informal approval to proceed, bypassing formal review processes. Option D. Delay the integration and initiate a formal security and compliance review process involving the relevant internal teams before proceeding. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the integration immediately to realize the cost savings, assuming the vendor's claims of security are sufficient. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the integration specialist must balance the immediate perceived benefits of a new feature with potential long-term security risks and compliance implications, all within the context of the VMware Workspace 121 X platform and its associated regulatory environment. The pressure to adopt new technology quickly can sometimes overshadow the need for thorough due diligence, especially when the immediate cost savings are quantifiable. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive risk assessment and compliance verification before full adoption. This aligns with the principle of security by design and proactive risk management, which are fundamental in IT governance and data protection. By engaging with the security and compliance teams, the specialist ensures that any integration adheres to established policies and regulatory mandates, such as those governing data privacy and system integrity, which are critical for maintaining trust and avoiding legal repercussions. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the immediate cost savings without considering security implications would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the potential for data breaches, unauthorized access, or noncompliance with regulations like GDPR or CCPA, depending on the specific jurisdiction implied by the exam's context. Though for this exam, we assume a general best practice framework without specific jurisdictional mandates unless otherwise stated. Such an approach could lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Another incorrect approach, which involves bypassing established change management processes to expedite deployment, ignores the importance of controlled and documented IT operations. This can lead to system instability, unforeseen conflicts with existing infrastructure, and a lack of auditability, all of which are detrimental to professional IT management and could violate internal governance policies. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that includes 1. Identifying the problem or opportunity, 2. Gathering relevant information, including technical feasibility, security risks, compliance requirements, and business impact, 3. Evaluating alternative solutions, 4. Selecting the best course of action based on a holistic assessment, and 5. Implementing and monitoring the chosen solution. In this context, the framework necessitates consulting with all relevant stakeholders, including security and compliance, before making a final decision, ensuring that all potential risks and benefits are thoroughly understood and mitigated. Question 14. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a critical business application running on an unsupported legacy operating system must be integrated with VMware Workspace 121 X to enable modern device management and security policies. The legacy application has no vendor support for patching or updates. What is the most appropriate approach to mitigate risks associated with this integration? Option A. Proceed with the integration without additional security measures, assuming Workspace 1 inherent security features will adequately protect the legacy application. Option B. Implement compensating security controls within Workspace 1, such as granular access policies and network segmentation, and develop a phased plan for the eventual remediation or replacement of the legacy application. Option C. Postpone the integration of the legacy application until it can be fully replaced with a modern, supported solution, even if this delays the deployment of Workspace 1 for other critical systems. Option D. Attempt to apply unofficial patches or make significant modifications to the legacy application to address potential vulnerabilities before integration. Correct answer is B. Implement compensating security controls within Workspace ONE, such as granular access policies and network segmentation, and develop a phased plan for the eventual remediation or replacement of the legacy application. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in advanced integration, where a critical business process relies on a legacy application that is being integrated with VMware Workspace ONE. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for integration to enable modern management and security with the inherent risks associated with an unpatched, unsupported legacy system. The potential for security vulnerabilities, operational disruptions, and compliance issues is significant, requiring a nuanced approach that prioritizes risk mitigation without completely halting progress. The absence of vendor support for the legacy application further complicates the risk assessment, as direct remediation of identified vulnerabilities is not possible. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a multifaceted strategy that acknowledges the risks while enabling the integration. This includes implementing compensating controls within Workspace ONE to isolate and protect the legacy application and its data, such as strict network segmentation, granular access policies, and robust monitoring. It also necessitates a proactive plan for eventual remediation or replacement of the legacy application, including a defined timeline and budget. This approach aligns with best practices for risk management by accepting a calculated level of risk, implementing mitigation strategies, and planning for long-term resolution. From a regulatory perspective, this demonstrates due diligence in protecting sensitive data and maintaining operational continuity, even when faced with technical limitations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proceeding with the integration without any additional security measures or a remediation plan is a direct violation of risk management principles and likely regulatory requirements for data protection and operational resilience. This approach creates an unacceptable level of exposure to security threats and operational failures. Attempting to fix the legacy application by applying unofficial patches or making significant modifications without thorough testing introduces new, unpredictable risks. This could lead to further instability, data corruption, and potential security backdoors, negating any perceived benefit and creating a compliance nightmare. Delaying the integration indefinitely until the legacy application is fully replaced, while seemingly risk-averse, can also be professionally unsound. It may prevent the organization from realizing the security and management benefits of Workspace ONE, potentially leaving other, more modern systems vulnerable due to a lack of unified security posture. This can also hinder business agility and innovation, which are often key drivers for such integrations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such integration challenges by first conducting a thorough impact assessment that quantifies the potential business and security risks. This assessment should inform a risk mitigation strategy that prioritizes the most critical threats. The decision-making process should involve collaboration with security, IT operations, and business stakeholders to ensure a shared understanding of the risks and the chosen mitigation approach. A phased approach, starting with the implementation of compensating controls and a clear roadmap for addressing the root cause, the legacy application, is generally the most effective and professionally responsible path. This demonstrates a commitment to both immediate security needs and long-term system health. Question 15. Which approach would be most effective in ensuring the secure and compliant integration of a new third-party application with VMware Workspace 121? X. Considering potential impacts on existing security policies and data privacy. Option A. Prioritize the immediate deployment of the new application to meet business demands, deferring any detailed impact assessment until after the integration is complete and operational issues arise. Option B. Rely solely on the third-party vendor's security documentation and assume their integration methods are compliant without independent verification or assessment. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates technical feasibility, security implications, data privacy concerns, and operational workflows, documenting all findings and mitigation strategies before proceeding with integration. Option D. Implement the integration using default security settings provided by VMware Workspace 121 X and address any reported issues on a case-by-case basis after deployment. Correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates technical feasibility, security implications, data privacy concerns, and operational workflows, documenting all findings and mitigation strategies before proceeding with integration. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in advanced integration, balancing the immediate need for a new feature with the potential long-term implications on system stability, security, and compliance. The professional challenge lies in conducting a thorough impact assessment that considers not just technical feasibility, but also the broader operational and regulatory landscape. This requires a proactive and systematic approach to identify risks before they materialize. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of responsible IT governance and risk management. By performing a comprehensive impact assessment, the integration specialist ensures that all potential consequences of the new integration are understood and addressed. This includes evaluating the effect on existing security controls, data privacy policies, and operational workflows. Such an assessment is crucial for maintaining compliance with relevant VMware Workspace 121X documentation and any applicable industry standards or internal policies that govern data handling and system integrity. It demonstrates a commitment to a secure and stable environment, which is paramount in enterprise IT. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical implementation without considering the broader impact would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to unforeseen security vulnerabilities, data breaches, or operational disruptions, all of which carry significant regulatory and ethical implications. For instance, failing to assess the impact on data privacy could violate regulations concerning personal data protection, leading to fines and reputational damage. Similarly, overlooking the effect on existing security configurations could expose the organization to cyber threats, breaching security best practices, and potentially violating compliance mandates. Another incorrect approach might be to defer the impact assessment to a later stage, which is a failure of due diligence. This reactive stance increases the likelihood of costly remediation efforts and can undermine trust in the IT department's ability to manage systems responsibly. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes a structured impact assessment. This involves clearly defining the scope of the integration, identifying all stakeholders, and systematically evaluating potential technical, operational, security, and compliance impacts. The process should involve documentation, risk identification, mitigation planning, and obtaining necessary approvals before proceeding with the integration. This proactive and documented approach ensures that decisions are informed, risks are managed, and regulatory requirements are met. Question 16. The review process indicates that a new Workspace ONE integration is being considered to enable enhanced mobile application management capabilities. However, there is a concern that this integration might inadvertently affect the performance of existing critical backend services and potentially introduce new security vulnerabilities if not properly evaluated. Which of the following approaches best addresses this concern from an impact assessment perspective? Option A. Implement the integration in a limited pilot group and only escalate to a full rollout if no immediate issues are reported by the pilot users. Option B. Proceed with the integration immediately to leverage the new capabilities and address any performance or security issues as they arise. Option C. Rely solely on the vendor's documentation for the integration, assuming it covers all potential impacts within the existing environment. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment that analyzes potential effects on back-end services, security posture, user experience, and data integrity, developing mitigation strategies before proceeding. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the integration immediately to leverage the new capabilities and address any performance or security issues as they arise. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in IT integration projects, balancing the immediate need for new functionality with the potential, often unforeseen, impacts on existing systems and user experience. The professional challenge lies in proactively identifying and mitigating risks before they manifest as operational disruptions or security vulnerabilities. This requires a systematic approach that goes beyond simply deploying new features. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough impact assessment. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT governance and risk management, which are implicitly expected within any regulated or compliance-conscious environment. even if specific regulations are not explicitly cited for this exam. A comprehensive impact assessment ensures that all stakeholders are considered, potential conflicts are identified, and mitigation strategies are developed. This proactive stance minimizes the likelihood of negative consequences, such as service degradation, data integrity issues, or security breaches, thereby safeguarding the organization's operational continuity and reputation. An incorrect approach that bypasses or inadequately performs an impact assessment would be professionally unacceptable. It demonstrates a disregard for potential risks and a failure to adhere to due diligence. This could lead to regulatory scrutiny if the organization is subject to specific compliance mandates, e.g., data privacy regulations, industry-specific security standards that require documented risk assessments. Ethically, it represents a failure to act in the best interest of the organization and its users by knowingly or negligently exposing them to potential harm. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This typically includes identifying potential impacts, technical, operational, security, user experience, assessing the likelihood and severity of these impacts, developing mitigation plans, and establishing monitoring mechanisms. When integrating new technologies or features, a mandatory step should be a formal impact assessment involving relevant technical teams, security personnel, and business stakeholders. This ensures a holistic view of the proposed changes and fosters a culture of proactive risk management. Question 17. The analysis reveals that an organization is planning to integrate a third-party security solution with VMware Workspace 121X to enhance endpoint security by monitoring application usage. The organization's security team has proposed a strategy to collect detailed logs of all application launches and usage patterns across all managed devices. However, some of these applications handle sensitive personal information. The integration must be compliant with relevant data protection regulations, and user privacy must be a key consideration. Which of the following approaches best balances the organization's security objectives with user privacy and regulatory compliance? Option A. Deploy the third-party security solution to automatically capture and analyze all application usage data without seeking additional user consent beyond the initial device enrollment, relying on the organization's broad IT acceptable use policy. Option B. Configure the integration to collect detailed application usage data only for applications deemed critical for security and obtain explicit, granular user consent for monitoring the usage of any other applications that handle sensitive data. Option C. Prioritize the security team's request for complete visibility by enabling the collection of all application usage data and address any privacy concerns on a case-by-case basis after the integration is live. Option D. Implement the integration to collect comprehensive application usage data from all devices, with a general privacy policy update informing users about the monitoring. The correct answer is D. Implement the integration to collect comprehensive application usage data from all devices, with a general privacy policy update informing users about the monitoring. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in managing sensitive user data within a Workspace ONE environment. The core difficulty lies in balancing the organization's need for comprehensive security monitoring with the user's right to privacy, particularly when dealing with potentially sensitive application usage. The integration of a third-party security solution introduces an additional layer of complexity, requiring careful consideration of data flow, consent, and compliance with relevant data protection regulations. The organization must ensure that any data collection and analysis are both technically feasible and legally permissible, avoiding overreach that could lead to regulatory violations or erode user trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a granular, consent-driven strategy for monitoring application usage. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, fundamental to many data protection frameworks. By obtaining explicit user consent for the monitoring of specific applications, the organization demonstrates respect for user privacy and ensures that data collection is proportionate to the stated security objectives. This approach also facilitates easier auditing and compliance, as the scope of data collection is clearly defined and justified by user agreement. Furthermore, it allows for a phased rollout, enabling the organization to test and refine the integration while managing user expectations and addressing concerns proactively. This method upholds the spirit of data protection regulations by prioritizing user autonomy and transparency. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing a blanket policy to monitor all application usage without explicit user consent for sensitive applications represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach violates the principle of data minimization, collecting more data than is strictly necessary for security purposes, and potentially infringes on user privacy rights. It also fails to adhere to the principle of purpose limitation, as the collected data might be used for purposes beyond the initial security justification without proper consent. Such a broad collection of data could be deemed excessive and intrusive, leading to potential penalties under data protection laws. Integrating the third-party security solution to automatically collect and analyze all application usage data, including that from sensitive applications, without a clear opt-in mechanism or a robust legal basis for processing, is also professionally unacceptable. This bypasses the requirement for informed consent and could lead to the unauthorized processing of sensitive personal data. The organization would be failing in its duty of care to protect user privacy and comply with data protection obligations, potentially exposing itself to legal action and reputational damage. Failing to conduct a thorough data protection impact assessment, DPIA, before deploying the integration, especially when sensitive application usage is involved, is a critical oversight. A DPIA is a regulatory requirement in many jurisdictions for high-risk data processing activities. Without it, the organization cannot adequately identify and mitigate privacy risks associated with the integration, increasing the likelihood of non-compliance and potential harm to individuals. This failure demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for regulatory mandates designed to protect personal data. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with integrating Workspace One solutions must adopt a risk-based and privacy-centric approach. This involves a continuous cycle of assessment, planning, implementation, and review. The decision-making process should begin with a comprehensive understanding of the organization's security objectives and the applicable regulatory landscape. A thorough data protection impact assessment is paramount, especially when dealing with sensitive data. Subsequently, the organization should explore technical solutions that allow for granular control over data collection and processing, prioritizing user consent and transparency. Regular audits and reviews of data handling practices are essential to ensure ongoing compliance and to adapt to evolving threats and regulations. The ultimate goal is to achieve a secure environment without compromising user privacy or violating legal obligations. Question 18. The performance metrics show a consistent increase in help desk tickets related to users requiring elevated administrative privileges on managed devices to perform specific, time-sensitive tasks. These tasks are critical for business operations, but are not part of the user's standard role. The current process involves manual escalation to IT administrators who then grant temporary local administrator rights directly on the device, often without a formal request or approval record. This ad hoc approach is becoming unsustainable and is raising concerns about security and auditability. Which of the following approaches best addresses this challenge while adhering to security best practices and compliance requirements for VMware Workspace 121? X integrations. Option A. Implement a robust conditional access policy within Workspace ONE that leverages the integrated identity provider to authenticate users and dynamically grant temporary role-based administrative access only when specific predefined conditions, e.g., device compliance, user group membership, time of day, are met, with all actions logged for auditing. Option B. Configure Workspace ONE to automatically grant temporary administrative access to any user who submits a help desk ticket requesting it, with a note to the administrator to review the access later. Option C. Develop a self-service portal where users can request elevated privileges, with the system automatically granting these rights after a short delay without any administrator review. Option D. Provide all users with permanent local administrator rights on their managed devices to eliminate the need for help desk intervention and expedite task completion. The correct answer is A. Implement a robust conditional access policy within Workspace ONE that leverages the integrated identity provider to authenticate users and dynamically grant temporary role-based administrative access only when specific predefined conditions, e.g., device compliance, user group membership, time of day, are met, with all actions logged for auditing. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of identity and access management within a regulated environment. The core difficulty lies in balancing the immediate need for user access with the stringent security and compliance requirements mandated by VMware Workspace 121. X integrations. Incorrectly granting access can lead to significant security breaches, data exfiltration, and non-compliance penalties, while overly restrictive measures can impede business operations and user productivity. The need for a robust, auditable, and compliant solution is paramount. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and documented process for granting elevated privileges. This aligns with the principle of least privilege, a fundamental security concept that minimizes the potential damage from compromised accounts or insider threats. By leveraging Workspace ONE conditional access policies and integrating with a robust identity provider, the solution ensures that access is granted only when specific, verifiable conditions are met. This approach is auditable, repeatable, and directly supports compliance with security frameworks that require granular control over privileged access. The integration with a trusted identity provider further strengthens the authentication process, ensuring that only authorized individuals can request and receive elevated permissions. Granting broad administrative access without a defined approval workflow is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It violates the principle of least privilege, creating an unacceptable attack surface. This approach lacks auditability, making it impossible to track who granted access, when and why, which is a critical requirement for most compliance frameworks. Furthermore, it bypasses established security controls, increasing the risk of unauthorized system modifications or data breaches. Implementing a temporary, time-bound access solution without proper justification or review also presents regulatory and ethical issues. While it attempts to address the immediate need, it lacks the necessary oversight and documentation. Without a clear audit trail of the justification for temporary access and the subsequent revocation, it can be difficult to demonstrate compliance with security policies. This approach can also lead to access creep, where temporary access is not properly revoked, leaving systems vulnerable. Relying solely on user self-service for elevated privileges without any form of verification or approval is a critical failure. This method completely bypasses security controls and auditability. It allows any user to potentially gain administrative access without any oversight, dramatically increasing the risk of accidental or malicious misuse of privileges. This approach is fundamentally incompatible with any security-conscious or regulated environment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment of the requested access, a clear understanding of the business justification, and adherence to established security policies and compliance requirements. This includes 1. Identifying the specific privileges required and the associated risks. 2. Evaluating existing security controls and their effectiveness. 3. Determining the most appropriate method for granting temporary or permanent access, prioritizing solutions that offer granular control, auditability, and integration with identity management systems. 4. Establishing a clear approval workflow with defined roles and responsibilities. 5. Ensuring that all access grants and revocations are logged and auditable. 6. Regularly reviewing and recertifying access privileges. Question 19. Market research demonstrates that organizations are increasingly adopting SaaS applications to enhance productivity, but the integration of these applications with existing enterprise mobility management solutions like VMware Workspace ONE present significant security and compliance challenges. Considering the 5v0-61, 22 VMware Workspace 121 X Advanced Integration Specialist Exam Syllabus, which of the following approaches best balances rapid deployment needs with robust security and compliance for integrating a new SaaS application with Workspace ONE? Option A. Prioritize immediate business needs by bypassing formal security reviews and directly integrating the SaaS application into the production Workspace ONE environment to expedite user access. Option B. Rely exclusively on the security assurances provided by the SaaS vendor, assuming their platform security is sufficient for the organization's needs without independent verification. Option C. Proceed with the integration without detailed documentation of security configurations and testing results, focusing solely on functional connectivity. Option D. Implement a phased integration strategy that includes thorough risk assessment, defining granular security requirements, and conducting comprehensive testing in a staging environment before production rollout. Correct answer is D. Implement a phased integration strategy that includes thorough risk assessment, defining granular security requirements, and conducting comprehensive testing in a staging environment before production rollout. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in managing the integration of a new SaaS application with an existing VMware Workspace ONE environment. The core difficulty lies in balancing the immediate business need for rapid deployment with the imperative to maintain robust security and compliance posture. The organization is under pressure to adopt new technologies to remain competitive, but this pressure can lead to shortcuts that compromise long-term security and regulatory adherence. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the integration process is not only technically sound, but also aligns with the organization's risk appetite and any applicable regulatory frameworks. The integration specialist must navigate potential conflicts between business agility and security best practices. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased integration strategy that prioritizes security and compliance from the outset. This includes conducting a thorough risk assessment of the SaaS application, defining clear integration requirements that encompass security controls, and performing comprehensive testing in a non-production environment before full deployment. This approach represents best professional practice because it proactively identifies and mitigates potential vulnerabilities, ensuring that the integration does not introduce new security risks or violate compliance mandates. By adhering to established security frameworks and best practices, such as those outlined by VMware for Workspace ONE integration, the organization can achieve its business objectives while maintaining a secure and compliant digital workspace. This aligns with the principle of security by design and demonstrates due diligence in protecting sensitive data and systems. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that bypasses security reviews and directly integrates the SaaS application into the production Workspace ONE environment is professionally unacceptable. This failure represents a significant regulatory and ethical lapse. It demonstrates a disregard for the organization's security policies and potentially violates data protection regulations by exposing sensitive information to unnecessary risks. Such an approach prioritizes speed over security, leading to a heightened likelihood of data breaches, unauthorized access, and noncompliance with industry standards or legal requirements. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the SaaS vendor's security claims without independent verification. While vendors have a responsibility to secure their platforms, the integrating organization remains accountable for the security of its own environment and the data it processes. Failing to perform due diligence and independent validation of security controls constitutes a breach of professional responsibility and can lead to regulatory penalties if a compromise occurs due to unverified vendor security. Finally, an approach that neglects to document the integration process, security configurations, and testing results is also professionally unsound. Lack of documentation hinders future troubleshooting, auditing, and compliance efforts. It makes it difficult to demonstrate adherence to security policies and regulatory requirements, and it impedes the ability to respond effectively to security incidents. This omission can be viewed as a failure to maintain proper records, which is often a regulatory requirement. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this field should adopt a decision-making framework that emphasizes a risk-based, security-first methodology. This involves 1. Understanding the business requirements and the potential impact of the integration. 2. Identifying all relevant security and compliance requirements, including those specific to the industry and jurisdiction. 3. Conducting a comprehensive risk assessment of the new technology and the integration process. 4. Developing a detailed integration plan that incorporates security controls and testing procedures. 5. Executing the integration in a controlled manner, with thorough testing and validation. 6. Documenting all aspects of the integration and ongoing monitoring. This systematic approach ensures that technical solutions are aligned with organizational objectives and security imperatives, fostering trust and minimizing risk. Question 20. During the evaluation of integrating a new cloud-based identity provider with an existing on-premises VMware Workspace ONE UEM deployment, which integration strategy best balances security, user experience, and adherence to regulatory frameworks for identity and access management? Option A. Directly configuring the cloud identity provider to authenticate users against the Workspace ONE UEM infrastructure. Option B. Implementing Workspace ONE Access as an identity broker to federate authentication between the cloud identity provider and Workspace ONE UEM. Option C. Integrating the cloud identity provider solely for device enrollment, bypassing user authentication for application access. Option D. Utilizing a custom script to synchronize user credentials between the cloud identity provider and Workspace ONE UEM. The correct answer is B. Implementing Workspace ONE Access as an identity broker to federate authentication between the cloud identity provider and Workspace ONE UEM. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in integrating a new cloud-based identity provider with an existing on-premises Workspace ONE UEM infrastructure. The core difficulty lies in ensuring seamless and secure user authentication and authorization across both environments, while adhering to the specific regulatory framework governing data handling and privacy relevant to the exam's jurisdiction. The need for a robust integration strategy that balances user experience with security mandates requires careful consideration of different technical approaches and their implications. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging Workspace ONE Access, formerly VMware Identity Manager, as the central identity broker. This method aligns with best professional practices by providing a single pane of glass for authentication and access control. Workspace ONE Access acts as a secure gateway, federating authentication requests to the chosen cloud identity provider, and then enforcing access policies before granting access to Workspace ONE UEM and other integrated applications. This approach ensures that user credentials are not directly exposed to the UEM infrastructure and allows for granular policy management, which is crucial for compliance with data privacy regulations. It supports modern authentication protocols like SAML and OAuth, enhancing security and user experience. Incorrect approaches analysis. Directly integrating the cloud identity provider with Workspace ONE UEM without an intermediary like Workspace ONE Access presents significant regulatory and ethical failures. This would likely involve exposing sensitive authentication mechanisms and potentially user credentials to the UEM infrastructure, violating principles of least privilege and data minimization. It bypasses the robust security and policy enforcement capabilities of Workspace ONE Access, increasing the attack surface and making it harder to audit access. Furthermore, it would likely lead to a fragmented user experience and complicate compliance efforts related to data residency and access logging, as the UEM infrastructure might not be designed to handle the complexities of cloud identity federation securely or in a compliant manner. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such integration challenges by first understanding the specific regulatory requirements of their operating jurisdiction concerning data privacy, authentication, and access control. This involves identifying the mandated security standards and compliance frameworks. Next, they should evaluate potential integration architectures against these requirements, prioritizing solutions that offer centralized control, robust security features, and auditability. A thorough risk assessment should be conducted for each approach, considering potential vulnerabilities and compliance gaps. The decision-making process should favor solutions that demonstrably enhance security posture, improve user experience through single sign-on, and simplify ongoing compliance management, rather than opting for the quickest or seemingly simplest technical implementation.